Hi everyone, I'm Lea. I'm with Scroll, and I will be giving you a little bit of a service talk today. This is a talk for everyone who has been following the zkEVM hype, is maybe still a little bit lost, but doesn't dare to ask any of the basic questions anymore. And I thought the best venue to do that is ECC, because this is kind of where it all started, the hype around zkEVMs last year. And what I'll do like a little recap really quickly, and we'll also talk about some of the differentiations. I have 15 minutes, so I won't be able to get into the nitty-gritty details, but I think I will be able to give you enough talking points or pointers if you're at a meetup later today or tomorrow to sound maybe a bit smarter. Okay. How did we get here? Last year during ECC, we had 3 teams announce their zkEVM plans. So Scroll, we announced our pre-alpha testnet. The day after, Polygon zkEVM announced that they're going to be the first ones to launch to mainnet, which was then shortly after followed by zkSync announcing their 100 days to mainnet countdown, if some of you remember. And from that moment on, it was really on. Like the race to mainnet had started, and also I think this was probably around that time when the narrative around L2 wars kind of was born. And that narrative aside, everyone got really excited because everything that we had seen so far, or up until that moment, when it came to like zk rollups, was it was not compatible with the EVM. It was like very specialized and required a lot of special tooling. And with the advent of the zkEVM, that changed. 1 year later, where are we at? We have definitely a lot more teams working in that space now, and they all kind of maybe seemingly do the same, really difficult to differentiate. We have 3 zkEVMs live now. Very soon we're going to have 4. And with that, more teams working on that, we also have a lot more educational material out there. There's a lot to read up on. But if your daily job does not involve reading up on zkEVMs on a daily basis, I think it's safe to say that it's still kind of tricky to follow along and like understand how they might differentiate. And that's where I'm like now gonna give a little bit of a recap what I think is enough to know. TLDR, why do we care about zkEVMs again? We need to scale Ethereum if we want to have Web2-like adoption. And I know people here at the conference also getting a bit tired of the infra narrative when dApps. But if we want that kind of adoption, we need better infrastructure. And with zkEVMs, we get the Ethereum experience, community devs, smart contracts, etc., just in a scalable fashion. Then more broadly, zk rollups, we love them because they're based on validity proofs. There is, unlike for fraud proofs, there is no game theory required. It only requires cryptography and math, which allows fast finality, and fast finality allows the users to do fast exit. It facilitates liquidity across layers and all sorts of things that we're going to see more of, I'm sure, in the next months, years. Also, not to forget, we do love when things ship early, because in the past, maybe we have not been shipping things too quickly or too early. And this was mainly possible through better proof systems, hardware acceleration, but also things like the PSE team, like a large-scale open source circuit engineering. And yeah, leading me, so we established why we love zkEVMs. But with also after ACC last year, more and more teams coming on, it was difficult to understand, okay, what is everyone doing? And in August that year, Vitalik published this distinction or classification of the different zkEVMs. And I think there it's important to understand the EVM is not built in a very zk-friendly way. So if you want to match the Ethereum experience, at some point you have to make some trade-offs, and as a team working on this, you have to make different design choices. So if you want to be as max compatible, you're gonna have to compromise on performance, for example. And so that's why we have this classification now, and it's very widely and commonly used. I get questions about that every time. I think it's perfect? Maybe. It does help, but it's also very technical. So I'm going to run through it really quickly in one sentence each. So you have the two axes, you have compatibility, and you have performance. And type 1 is basically zkEVM, as if Ethereum wasn't a snark. Then you have type 4, which is on the other side of the spectrum, which is a zk-friendly VM that is not compatible with the EVM. And in between, you have 3 more distinctions that are technical and are a little bit more subtle. Type 2 is basically EVM equivalence, but not Ethereum equivalent. So you have the same smart contracts, but you have some changes to the protocol. 2.5 does have some EVM modifications, such as gas pricing, for example. Maybe you've heard that on crypto Twitter floating around. And then type 3 is more EVM modifications, like, for example, pre-compats, etc. Most of the teams out there are probably working towards 2.5. The ones that are currently in production are probably more on 3, 4. And as I said, while I do think it's helpful, it's sometimes also really tricky to learn about these subtle differences. So what I find a little bit more helpful to step back and go at a bit more high level, and basically having these two buckets, because it focuses a bit more on the impact rather than these subtleties. So language level compatibility is also a mouthful, and bytecode level compatibility. Language level compatibility, you compile an EVM-friendly language to a snark-friendly VM that differs from the EVM. This comes with potentially compatibility issues, but also what you might want to consider if you're looking at where to deploy your dApp. It might also mean that you can move faster on some experimental APIs, for example, or include crazy opcodes. So maybe you're going to resonate with that one. You also have, then if you then look at the bytecode level compatibility side, there you can just interpret the EVM bytecode directly. And it makes it just really easy to port over your dApp if you have deployed on Ethereum or another EVM chain already. Because it's compatible with Ethereum smart contracts, currently we're looking at that it is potentially slower in performance, but the teams working on this are continuously optimizing and think that we will sort of close that gap more and more gradually. And is also closer to Ethereum's roadmap. So the teams can also potentially contribute to Ethereum's roadmap upstream. And this is also where you can put Scroll into that bucket. So looking at that, and I think the talks that you've seen before me already hint at that or already go on to that, because there is a lot more to a roll-up than the EVM. There is, so if you look at the different teams, you might also want to look at, and I think this will become more and more of a decisive factor in the months to come, you might want to look at the general innovation, what does the team think about what comes next for the L2? How does it think about what use cases does it bet on, etc. Then, very fitting with the previous talk about the sequencing part. So what is really important also for a team is to remove the single points of failure and how the teams think about decentralizing their sequencer network. Open source spirit, I think this is why we're all here. Teams approach this in a different manner. how transparent are teams, how much do they also collaborate with different teams. There's like a ton of design spaces that still need to be figured out, and there we're also going to rely on collaborating with different teams. Security is a no-brainer, but is going to be just like really important for the teams, for any team going forward, and most likely no team will be successful if they don't take that seriously in the long term. So that includes audits, but as well L2, MEV, or also then multi-prover setups. This is obviously, again, an incomplete list. If you want to continue like tracking how the different teams are doing on that, L2Beat is a really good one, and just to follow along, they list some of those aspects on their website for the chains that are live. One that I recently found, which I also think is interesting to take a look at, is roll-up codes. It goes more into like the technical differences of the different L2s in general, not just zk rollups. And with that, I also obviously want to make the case for Scroll. You can, as I said earlier, you can put us in the bytecode compatibility bucket. The feedback that we've consistently been getting from developers at hackathons and hacker houses is that it is almost boring to deploy on Scroll, because the developer experience is very close to Ethereum L1, and you don't necessarily notice that you deploy an L2, and all you have to do is literally change the RPC. And then also like one thing that is really important for us as well, during ETH Denver, we had like all these memes about who's going to be the first zkEVM, who's going to be more first than the other. And around that time, we were thinking about maybe it's equally important to think about who is community first, or to be community first. And what we mean by that is that we think it's really important to build out in the open. That's something that we have been doing from day one, together with the PSE team and like the Ethereum Foundation. And I think that also should trickle down in how you engage with your ecosystem. So last week we launched our initiative Contribute to Scroll, where we want to hear from individual contributors, but also different teams. What does it take to get them to the next step, and but also how can they contribute in like shaping the future of Scroll. Security first at every step. You're not going to see us rushing to mainnet without a proper audit. We are taking precautions there. L2s are something you build for the long term. That's what we're here for. And I mentioned it before, decentralizing the sequencer network is going to be important for every L2. This is something that we have been thinking about also from the start. We are exploring different models in parallel, and we will shift our focus towards this right after we launch mainnet. And which brings me to my last point. Mainnet, we are going to provide the Ethereum ecosystem with the developer experience that you already have on testnet very, very soon. Soon we're going to have 4 zkEVMs. We're going to launch end of the summer in Q3. And I'm really good on time. And then, yeah, just to like wrap up, I think this week is busy for everyone here. We're going to be at a bunch of different events. We have a lot of people from the team here. We will be speaking, discussing, would love to talk to everyone. This is a quick overview. And up next, one event that I want to highlight is that our team is very, very distributed. We have a lot of people also in China, and we're going to host the very first ETH event in Hong Kong in October this year. And obviously also DevConnect this year we're going to host an L2 day together with L2 Beat, which will be exciting. If you want to participate, come talk to me afterwards. And I think that was it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you. I think we're headed into lunch, so I will be here if you want to talk to me, have questions. We can also just discuss outside. Cool. Thank you.